I'd like to take a moment to thank the Blockchain Academy. The Blockchain Academy is an educational training firm offering blockchain training to the enterprise. The Blockchain Academy offers courses for both management and developers, offering delivery online and in live classrooms. The Blockchain Academy works with enterprise clients to create and deliver innovative training programs globally. They recently announced a new blockchain course targeted towards attorneys. To learn more about the Blockchain Academy, visit them at www.theblockchainacademy.com.
This is the Blockchain 360 podcast. Blockchain 360 is a podcast of interviews and discussions about the current state and direction of blockchain. Thank you for joining us today. If this is your first time listening, then thank you for coming. The Blockchain 360 podcast is produced weekly for your enjoyment, and show notes are found at our website, blockchain360.co. Come back often and feel free to add the podcast to your favorite RSS feed or iTunes. You can also follow us on Twitter at Blockchain360. All links discussed today are included in the show notes.
My name is Brian Nielsen, and I'm your host here on the podcast Blockchain 360. And my guest today is Seth Patinkin, and he is the co-founder and CEO of Ampersand Markets, which is creating a silver-based ecosystem around a new category of digital assets, allowing buyers to own silver inside the blockchain ecosystem. Seth did his PhD work in mathematics under the late John Forbes Nash at Princeton University. A former quant trader, Seth has been credited with the creation of a novel cryptographic signature called GammaPi, which has been viewed as a viable alternative to the QR code. Seth, welcome to the Blockchain 360.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. So you have kind of an interesting background. I did a little research on you to find out. I just pulled up your LinkedIn profile to try to get a better understanding of everything that you are, and you've been a quant trader for a long time, basically going back to, it looks like 2003.
Yes, thereabouts, correct.
And so what made you decide to leave that quant aspect and start to create something that is so much different, creating a crypto-based digital asset?
So my interest in this topic kind of goes back to my graduate work. There was a topic that was of interest with my PhD advisor, John Nash. Namely, he was interested in making a new currency that would be backed by precious metal, that would also have a global adoption model, and also would be free of the control of the sovereign banks. So following up on this string of conversations, I thought, well, gee, we have blockchain technology now, so it might be possible to revisit this topic. So in early 2018, I looked at doing just that, and I decided that the way that would make sense to tokenize physical assets with something not present in the marketplace, namely, it would be appropriate to combine tokenization of a physical asset together with a digital asset in a single token in a format in which that digital asset would be allowed to scale in value and reflect the economic activity of a consortium that utilizes that token for doing business.
Well, you've just brought up a number of different items here with regards to this. One of the things that you've basically said, as I'm hearing it, is that you're providing a physical asset as part of the digital tokenization, and you're actually suggesting that they have to be in tandem. I read one of your articles where I think that you refer to it as intrinsic value versus extrinsic value. Can you explain to me and to the listening audience exactly what that really kind of means?
Yes. So what I mean by intrinsic value is when you have a tokenization of a physical asset, there's actually some real ascertainable value there. It's well understood, and it's basically a floor of value. What I mean by extrinsic is you would like to also capture the utility of such a token in a larger ecosystem or in a consortium that might use this token for various purposes, including, let's say, in the case of metal-backed token, modernizing the way the metals vertical does business. So it's very critical to have both stores of value in a single token, because you need to have some sort of adoption logic for people to acquire these tokens and to develop a following.
So what you're saying to me is that without that physical asset for establishing value, that it's difficult to understand and assess what a market price would be for a digital asset, a purely digital asset?
So the point is, if you have a purely physical asset token, the price of that token tracks, let's say, the spot price, and
Sure.
there's no real adoption model for that token other than it doesn't offer a benefit over buying, for example, an ETF that's based on the physical asset. In the case of our way of doing things, a so-called hybrid token, you enjoy the ascertainability and the floor of that physical asset in the token, and you also enjoy the prospective upside of the digital asset that we create when that physical asset is moved into our blockchain. So it's a token which enjoys the certainty and the ascertainability of the physical asset in the token and all that brings, together with the prospective upside of the digital asset that is minted when the token is offered for sale.
Okay. Now, part of, as I did reading about this, part of this is you're trying to create a Nash equilibrium in a crypto token. Is that correct? In essence, by having
yes.
it based on silver, which is really a commodity?
Yes. Through this structure, we are suggesting that we can achieve pricing for this token over time, which should be reflective of an equilibrium. In other words, there should be a very orderly characteristic to the way the digital asset in the token moves up over time. As a result of that, it should basically create a flat marketplace, and the ascertainability of the value of the silver in the token should also eliminate some of the uncertainty that is typically lends itself to manipulation by, let's say, cartels and groups of individuals who want to prop up a price of a digital asset or cause it to move in a certain direction. So because of those characteristics, that there's this broad ascertainability about what that appreciation looks like over time, because the digital asset is connected to the custody of the physical asset, it should lend itself to pricing via Nash equilibrium.
Not everyone understands what a Nash equilibrium is. Can you take a moment and explain that to us?
Sure. There's a Nash equilibrium condition when, let's say, there's a number of players in a game, and we're in equilibrium at point if it is such that a given player cannot benefit from modification of his strategy, assuming all the other players retain the same strategy. So basically, it's some sort of like a local minimum of a function, if you will. If you move in any direction, you're going to go higher. It's kind of like this. So it's kind of expressed like a convexity condition, in which any movement, left or right, if you will, is going to result in a smaller payout for the player. That is a Nash equilibrium. So that compares, on the other hand, to lack of equilibrium. A lack of equilibrium is a situation in which there are groups that are cooperating to achieve a certain end to the disadvantage of those outside of the group.
So you've argued that we have an imbalance in the crypto market simply because there's such a high concentration of ownership among such few people that they have a tendency to manipulate the market.
Yes, the crypto market generally lacks a lot of information transparency that is typical of the other markets. Let's say the futures markets or the equities markets, which enjoy a lot of infrastructure and information transparency. As a result of that, information can be shared amongst few participants. There are a number of schemes where participants who control a lot of the resources in the blockchain are able to collaborate to achieve a better result for themselves to the detriment of the rest of the token holders. So that is the general theme of the crypto markets, is that there are a number of instances in which collaboration by a few individuals with, let's say, larger size on the blockchain can coordinate with each other to achieve a better end for themselves, which is specifically worse for the rest of the participants.
Right. You also have said that one of the drawbacks to at least Bitcoin is that it has a limited supply of tokens. Why is having a limited supply of tokens a bad thing versus what you're doing at Ampersand Markets, having an expanding supply of tokens as it relates to the underlying asset?
Right. So there's a couple of points there. If there is a truly fixed number, a fixed finite number that doesn't necessarily achieve the ongoing growth that one would like to achieve. In the case of, for example, being able to bring in physical assets over time in a sort of never-ending manner. Having a finite cap introduces certain kinds of constraints which are unfavorable for, let's say, the broad long-term price dynamics. And as a result of that, it's a setting in which there are a number of games that can be played by those who control size that disfavor a pure sort of equitable approach by all the token holders.
So how does the Ampersand Markets product circumvent that consolidation or that concentration of ownership by few people, or even groups of people acting in a coordinated manner to actually take advantage of the market?
So in our case, we offer physical assets starting with silver to anyone who would like to own this token. And the path to ownership is very equitable for all. The appreciation itself is more a reflection of what that supplying of tokens looks like into the marketplace over time, and the economic activity of the consortium, which utilizes these tokens for doing business. For example, we are working with a number of dealers, prospectively a refiner, who are interested in issuing these tokens because of the economics and the digital right of the token, which provides some additional incentive for them to sell their product in a new format. Because that's a generally scalable proposition, which lends itself to the growth and adoption of this token by, let's say, other members of the metals vertical. It promotes a very sort of controlled and well understood evolution of the price of the token over time.
Now, when you said that you started looking at revisiting the idea of a currency backed by a physical asset back in 2018, how did that formation of thought actually end up in the creation of the Ampersand Markets, which is your firm?
Right. So again, the way that looked is I did a fairly extensive review of what had been done in asset tokenization. In physical asset tokenization, there were basically two approaches that have been adopted thus far. One is the use of what I call spot tokens. These are tokens that track the spot price of a physical asset. There are many of them. They go by many of the names in the periodic table for gold and silver, AU, AG, AUR, and other variants of these periodic representations. There are 100 or 200 such efforts thus far, which have tokenized a gram of gold or some unit of gold or silver in a spot format. The second type of effort, which is exhibited by some recent groups like Digix in Singapore and Kinesis, is to offer a spot token, which can be used, say, for commerce or payment system, together with an investor token, a separate token, which can appeal to the onboarding of capital into the ecosystem to fund development of that project. The problem with the dual token system is there's typically very asymmetric participation in the investor token to the detriment of participation in the spot token. So it doesn't really balance the utility interests of using a token for, let's say, commerce or internal transfers and exchanges with the capital that should come in over time to develop such a community. So our response is that these two aspects should be merged into a single token. There should be the actual physical asset in the token, together with a digital asset that expresses the upside of the ecosystem or the community that develops over time to utilize the token as a way of doing business or conducting transfers.
If I understand what you're saying is that the dual token system, one is kind of like a security token, which represents, say, an ownership interest in a sense of capital improvements to either do mining or whatever, storage or whatever the case might be. And the other one is actually then the commerce or retail usage in that dual token system. So how is it that you are able to achieve both of those in a single token? I'm still not a little clear on that. So if you could help me on that, I'd appreciate it.
Yes. So the way we do that is we stipulate that when a physical asset comes into our blockchain, in this case silver, that the digital asset, which we call the digital right, is then minted. So we have a very strong atomic way of verifying the custody of the metal in our blockchain, which allows us to then mint the digital asset and create the token. So that is the cornerstone of how our token construct works. We are assured very clearly that the digital asset is only being created when the physical asset is coming into the system. And specifically, we don't view it like an investment device, if you will. It's really more of an autonomous digital asset, which is allowed to scale with the growth of the ecosystem.
One of the questions that a lot of people will ask is since you're bringing this onto blockchain, what platform are you actually using? Are you going to be using any one of the top 10 platforms out there, whether it be Hyperledger Fabric, Sawtooth, EOS, Corda, Ethereum? What have you made the decision as to which one you're going to be working with?
Right. So our vaulted silver token, AXSI, is offered on the EOS platform. We specifically do this because of the governance that is offered by the EOS platform, which is allowed to control various aspects, such as, let's say, in our case, the association of the physical asset with the digital asset into the single token. So we're able to specifically initiate and maintain that structural association because of the strong governance and the Ricardian contract sort of capabilities that are part of the EOS platform. Additionally, a huge benefit of EOS is that it's much more scalable than other platforms like Ethereum. It can support thousands of transactions per second, whereas Ethereum, for example, can support maybe only 10 or 15 transactions per second. So and further, there's a gas model in Ethereum, which requires the consumption of resources of the token holder in order to do any sort of transaction or transfer. Whereas on EOS, it's a staking mechanism. So we at Ampersand Markets stake EOS tokens. The holders don't have to incur an expense when they move a token or do a transfer or another action on the blockchain.
Great. By the way, I'm a big proponent of EOS. So one of the things that you also talked about is this digital right as it relates to your hybrid token. Why did you choose the word digital rights instead of something more cryptographically oriented, like something coin? Or, I mean, one of the examples that I'm familiar with where there's a physical asset attached to a token is what Orbitz is doing. They've actually securitized gold into a digital asset. This seems to be something very similar to what you're doing at Ampersand.
Right. So again, typically, what's going on with these physical asset tokenization efforts is they are placeholders for a physical asset. I think this example is yet another instance in which the value of the token is just the value of the physical asset. In our case, the digital right can be viewed as a actual utility in which the loading or unloading of a physical asset onto the blockchain is done via the digital rights. And very specifically, redemption of the physical asset by a token holder does not cause destruction or burn of the digital rights. So this is a critical component of the way we look at things, is that the digital right is not specifically is not destroyed on redemption. As a result, it's allowed to sustain an autonomous value, which can reflect the adoption of the token in the larger ecosystem that we're building.
Why did you choose silver as your underlying asset?
So we decided to lead with silver because it's got a very good industrial footprint in comparison with gold, which has almost no industrial participation. As a result, a silver-based token should lend itself to modernizing the consumption and participation by industrial participants. This basically lends itself to a larger ecosystem of, let's say, traditional metals vertical participants that might be involved in a silver token. It's also a precious metal, so the cost is nominal. The cost is a bit higher in terms of storage because of the sheer volume versus gold, but it's still very cost efficient in terms of storage. So it's for those reasons that we decided to go with silver. So there are other precious metals, platinum, palladium, that would make sense to expand in terms of the rollout of our so-called hybrid protocol, and we intend to do so. But our starting point is silver.
How did you end up securing participation from the silver industry to actually be a part of and create the Ampersand Consortium?
So that was a kind of a result of discussions we had starting in early 2018 with some of the dealers and wholesalers who are involved in the space. There was a bit less of a representation of a digital modernization for the transaction and acquisition of silver than there was for gold, for example. So it was a relatively painless process to solicit the involvement of some of the dealers and wholesalers which are involved in the space.
Pause for a brief message from our sponsors. Blockchain Academy has launched its 10,000 blockchain developers training initiative. We all know that without developers, enterprise implementation of new technology is not possible. With limited number of available developers, many blockchain projects are in a perpetual state of delay. The Blockchain Academy wishes to solve this problem with this new training initiative. They want to train 10,000 blockchain developers over the course of the next 36 months. They're starting their first cohort this July with a focus on Hyperledger Fabric. Full-stack programmers looking to upskill their capabilities or programmers who are looking to leap into this disruptive technology can take this course. It's a comprehensive course consisting of over 100 hours of live instructor-led training. Coursework will require an additional 130 hours, and there's over 30 hours of additional course assistance offered during the term of the program. The course is scheduled so that you don't disrupt your existing job. Classroom training is conducted for 5 hours on Saturdays and 5 hours on Sundays each week for the 10-week program. Learn more about this innovative training at www.theblockchainacademy.com. Welcome back to the ongoing conversation we're having with Seth Patinkin. Have you already started taking and creating vaulted silver to support your token? I mean, this is essentially almost a stable coin type of analogy that people would understand.
So the way it works is we have a private sale that's actually taking place right now, and the tokens are purchased by the participants. Per the demand, the silver is acquired on the back end and is deposited into one of our custodian facilities, such as First State Depository of Delaware or Brinks Los Angeles, as an example.
Okay.
Now, so basically, to answer your question, we're not acquiring silver in bulk prior to the acquisition of tokens by token investors. It's done as the process rolls out.
Now, so your roadmap currently has you then last quarter at least establishing your blockchain application and smart contracts. This quarter is your private sale, Q1 2019. Actually, we're already into Q2. So you're trying to, at least at this point on your roadmap, to increase the consortium participation, and you're going to release a mobile wallet to help people with this?
That's correct. We're working on a custom wallet. Currently, token holders are able to hold their tokens in the EOS wallet, and we are in the process of soliciting other metals participants as so-called couplers in our network. These couplers are allowed to do token issuance to sell the token to new buyers.
So you're basically extending the number of people offering the token to a wider audience for participation, to expand that participation level.
Correct. Yeah, we're specifically decentralizing the issuance of tokens to other traditional metals vertical participants, such as dealers and wholesalers and other entities which are close to refiners, which are some of the central entities in bringing new silver out of the ground and in getting it out to market.
Now, how does your work with Nash intersect with this Ampersand offering?
Well, from a long-term steady state perspective, as we increase the participation in the token, we would expect that there would be a sufficient number of holders wherein there would be an actual possibility of utilizing the token in some sort of manner like a real currency with the implicit backing of the infrastructure that we've built in modernizing the metals vertical, and with the backing of all the silver at that point, that is a hallmark of the growth of the token base. So we feel that after some period of time, the token could be readily utilized as a currency. At this time, that is not our immediate objective. The immediate objective is to facilitate adoption, and we're facilitating adoption because of the prospective price profile and appreciation of the digital rights, which is the key to generating a real following for the token. And once there's a following, then adoption's been achieved, and at that point, the ascertainability of value in the silver lends itself to a construct which would be consistent with what Nash wanted to achieve in terms of a metal-backed currency.
Now, what you're telling me with regards to what Nash at least envisioned on a digital type, non-government issued currency was that it has to be something that has a market stability. It has to have something that has large market participation. Does a Nash Equilibrium exist in the crypto markets at all? And does your product this hybrid digital rights token from Ampersand, is that going to help achieve that kind of Nash Equilibrium? Actually, that's a couple of questions right there. So,
right. So our thesis is that the precious metal in the token provides this ascertainability value, which basically assists the token along the avenue of a cognizable and well understood path of appreciation over time. Because of that, there is less incentive for game playing and manipulation, and that sets the stage for pricing that is characterized by Nash Equilibrium. So it is basically the way we encapsulate the intrinsic ascertainable value of the silver in the token, together with the extrinsic value of the ecosystem in the digital rights, which allows us to set the stage for a pure non-cooperative setting in which the equilibrium should apply.
now, one of the things you keep talking about is the idea as it relates to the Nash Equilibrium concept of having no advantage for any one player over others. What is the disadvantage of, outside of some obviously market manipulation, but what's the disadvantage of groups of people coordinating their activities to achieve a common goal?
The disadvantage in such an instance is for those outside of the group. So if we can eliminate incentives for coordination by small groups and coalitions, we can then set the stage for a more pure non-cooperative setting by all of the holders. So that is our goal in terms of what the long-term steady state of this looks like, is to have an ecosystem in which there is this very broad ascertainability about the value of the token and what it will do over time as a reflection of the growth of the ecosystem. That sort of certainty or confidence in that relationship should discourage the development and pursuit by coalitions to manipulate the price.
And when we think about market manipulation by groups of people, that has happened in the past in silver markets. I mean, going back to the 80s, we had the Bass brothers who were trying to actually corner the silver market. How does this digital rights token actually prevent that type of collaborative takeover of a market or manipulation of a market?
So we are not specifically addressing what might happen in the physical market. We're more addressing the effect of including the physical asset in the token and the impact that has on the ascertainability of the value of the token. So you are correct. We cannot we cannot prevent events that might occur in the underlying physical market or markets. Rather, we are interested in the combination of the physical market with an associated digital asset, and what that implies for the future of the token generally. So again, our belief is that that is a formula which lends itself to a very orderly sensibility about the appreciation of the token over time. And the result of that behavior is the disincentivization of coalitions from participating in a way that would be more typical of what's happened in some of the other digital assets that don't have any cognizable floor of value or ascertainability about what their price should be, or what should be their fair market value.
What I like what you're talking about is it's you're really defining the differences between your token offering and, say, what other traditional token asset tokenization is occurring, in the sense that you're trying to at least provide a larger market capability rather than a store of value. From your perspective, though, what is the one or two, possibly three differences between your securitization of silver assets versus other asset tokenizations?
Well, as I said, the previous efforts in asset tokenization have largely been expressed by what I call spot tokens. They're tokens which carry the value of the metal and no more. They typically offer
from a spot
redemption.
price, not like from a futures basis.
Correct, right. They typically offer a burn on redemption model, where redemption causes destruction of the token. That is, those attributes are not amenable to growth of a community around a token over time, and don't lend themselves to a real continuing adoption model. In our case, we'd like to think that the offering of the tokens into the market can be truly a recurring and regular event, which is basically a modernization of the way the dealers and wholesalers do business. For them, there's incremental economics because of that digital asset that they're able to capture a piece of on sale. And for the buyers, they're okay with buying these tokens with the digital rights, because there's a prospective appreciation in the digital right, and because of the utility of the digital right to load and unload the physical. So in the case of an actual consumer, they are amenable to purchasing this hybrid construct, because if their desire is consumption, they can facilitate consumption with a single digital right and the repeated loading and unloading of the physical out of the token.
Okay. Now, your particular token is really built for almost the industry rather than a retail type of approach. I mean, I'm sure that there can be some small investors who would absolutely be a part of it, but really you're looking at it from a production side, industrial buyers and major investors trying to benefit from the economics that your token is providing. Is that correct?
Actually, we would say that we appeal to a spectrum of participants. On the one hand, we appeal to the traditional buyers in that space, but we are also appealing to the consumers and the buyers of digital assets, because we're offering a new digital asset for which the behavior and the prospective appreciation is a function of the custody of the physical asset in the token. So it's a different way of prospecting digital appreciation, which is uncorrelated or should be unconnected with the way other digital assets appreciate in the marketplace.
One of the things that I find interesting about your particular token is it's not just for the physical asset, which would be out of the ground physical asset. You're actually also embedding some of the in-ground opportunities in your prices, as well as having the ability for these buyers of the tokens to take advantage of those below price values, simply because, as an example, if I know that my silver mine has X amount of silver in it, it absolutely has less values because it's still in the ground versus out of the ground and usable and refined. What made you decide to include that in-ground opportunity for the mineral?
Right. So, so generally, we look at our approach as a hybrid protocol, if you will, for encapsulating physical assets. So on the one hand, we have above ground silver in a token that that already exists on the EOS platform. We'd like to extend this concept to other metals and minerals in the ground. The attraction of tokenizing in-ground minerals is this is a way for example, mines to prospect new capital, a new way of obtaining capital for functioning, for their working capital needs. For the streamers and mining finance community, this represents a way for prospecting, let's say, the crowdsourcing or external sourcing of capital for deals which are required for financing mine operations. So this construct should appeal to all of the traditional ways in which in-ground minerals are transacted, whether it's from the perspective of a mine raising working capital or from the perspective of streaming or a mining finance company for the purpose of obtaining liquidity from assets on their books in the form of streams, or for the purpose of opening up the capitalization of deals they conduct to a token audience.
I think that you have a great opportunity here. So what is the future? What's coming up next for Ampersand? And what is the near future roadmap, say, for the next year?
So I would say that that roadmap looks like expanding to some other minerals. So we're in talks with a number of mines and operators in the mining space. And we'd like to see some traction on tokenizing the in-ground assets. So that would be one aspect. Another would be servicing the offering of the tokens on the EOS platform, including additional transfer capabilities and wallet functionality that we intend to roll out. So we'd like to broadly see an expansion of this rollout of the hybrid capability to support additional metals and in-ground minerals, providing additional value for the buyers in our community.
So with these minerals, are these minerals that and these miners, are they all US based, or are they, what is the global distribution of participants in your tokenization of this?
So our focus in terms of miner outreach has been North America and South America. Most of the mining finance and streamer community is based in Toronto. So our outreach to that community has largely focused on a Canadian audience.
Okay. Now, why don't you tell me a little bit about your management team? I know that you're the CEO and founder, but you have some very impressive other people who are a part of your team there at Ampersand Markets.
Yeah, so my co-founder, Satya Vala, was the former lead engineer of Yahoo Finance. We also have an architect, Kashi Kalidindi, who was one of the lead developers at NYSE and also worked at Yahoo Finance and has worked on a lot of scalable applications. Additionally, we have an investor who is our CFO. His name is Sarkis Khalil. He's got an extensive background in dealing with financial requirements for companies in the growth phase. We also have some advisors. Among them, we have a gentleman named Paul Rieger, who is a principal at RCM Alternative Assets. Paul Rieger has got a long history dating back to the Man Financial days, and he's been instrumental in connecting some of the dots for us in terms of some of the institutional players that are involved in our ecosystem, as well as getting some of the financial institutions that are required for deployment of our product for the purpose of users, being able to procure the token and to participate in this ecosystem.
Right, that sounds great. I want to step back and just ask your opinion, because of your unique background of general larger issues as it relates to the crypto markets. What do you believe is the biggest problem currently plaguing the crypto markets?
I would say that generally a big problem is information transparency. So again, we'd like to say that we are offering a step to surmount that problem that has been a general issue with the crypto markets, by offering the very broad ascertainability of value and the prospective future behavior of the tokens that we're offering to the marketplace.
Now, you mentioned that a number of other metals are kind of in the future. Do you know which ones you'll be starting with after you have some stabled market participation for the silver token? And are each metal going to have a separate token?
So our sense is that the digital right, which is minted upon acquisition of the token, in the case of the silver token, should be basically a sort of universal construct for all of the tokens that we offer. It will be up to the individual issuers with respect to different mineral assets as to what that ratio looks like in terms of the utilization of a digital asset, digital right, and the quantity of physical asset that is required for tokenization in the particular offshoots. So we would like to say that the digital right expresses a universal utility in our system. It offers prospecting and the ability to load various minerals over time, as well as in-ground minerals below the spot price, providing that unique value for the participants in our token.
How are you going to be providing that transparency that you've talked about as it relates to the value of your token? Is that going to be part of Ampersand Markets distribution of information to try to provide that transparency? Or does the market already exist that already provides a sufficient amount of information with regards to market consumption, market utilization, what is the mining quantity, and all those things? Is that going to be part of what you offer for that transparency, or is that already sufficiently available in the financial markets?
Well, again, we're not necessarily trying to provide statistics on the metals marketplace. Rather, we are interested in the effect of this one-to-one relationship between the mineral assets and the issuance of this digital rights, and what that implies for the ecosystem. Basically, that sets up a scenario in which the digital right is the unique method of conveyance of the minerals into the blockchain. And when there's a sufficient quantity of the physical assets involved, that becomes a very important regulator for the foundation of that ecosystem.
I would agree. I want to thank you for actually participating in the Blockchain 360. I find what you're doing at Ampersand Markets, the creation of your Ampersand Consortium, to be highly fascinating. But before we go, I just want to ask your opinion about some of the general market activities with regards to crypto markets. In your Forbes article that was recently published, you made a comparison to the crypto markets being similar to Game of Thrones. But at the very end of that, you suggested that or at least that what I took away is that you think that the crypto markets as they now stand, that would be non-asset attached cryptocurrencies, is basically going to burn to the ground. Did I understand that correctly?
I think the point there was that unless there are positive steps taken towards promoting information transparency and an equitable pursuit of value by all participants, that the intervention and the effects of coalitions will continue to be done at the expense of the other holders. So that is the suggestion, is that unless the playing field is leveled, wherein size can be utilized in a way that is done now to take over blockchains and to cause price movements that are at the expense of the other participants, then the marketplace will continue to remain inequitable for all holders.
Not only inequitable, but I'll still remain highly volatile. So what is your target date for when this collapses? Where do you think, as just simply because so many people are familiar with the Bitcoin pricing, where do you think Bitcoin is going to end at the end of this year? And where do you think it will be, say, in 5 years?
I'm certainly not making any predictions about that marketplace. I'm really more making the comparison between a marketplace in which there is that sort of transparency and what that implies for the permanence of that marketplace versus a marketplace which encourages the participation of coalitions and manipulators, and what that implies about the effect on the marketplace. So perhaps one might take the stance that long-term the crypto markets will embrace that sort of information transparency. I'm suggesting that one way for us to help that along is to offer our hybrid tokens as a way of accelerating that outcome. So it's really more about what this hybrid structure of the token implies, about what this might offer for the digital asset marketplace. It's less about what a particular opinion one might have about the pure digital marketplace today.
I think you navigated that question quite well. So everyone who wants to learn more about Ampersand Markets would go to ampersandmarkets.world. No,
correct.
That's correct. Right. Okay, ampersandmarkets.world. And if they want to participate in your offering, is there a way for them to do so?
Yes, we offer a portal for that purpose at ampersandmarkets.com. It's screened for U.S.-based accredited investors. So that portal is a self-service portal which allows individuals to obtain, to procure the token.
All right, so to learn more about it, again, it's ampersandmarkets.world to learn about what they're doing, and the portal for participating as an investor will be ampersandmarkets.com.
Correct.
Thank you, Seth. Thank you for appearing on the Blockchain 360. And I'd like to actually follow up with you in about 6 or 7 months to see how things are going and get an update from you at that point. But thank you again.
Thank you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
All right.
The Blockchain 360 podcast is produced weekly. Have a question? Want us to interview someone specific? Wish to hear about a particular topic? Let us know. You can email podcast@blockchain360.co or tweet us on Twitter @blockchain360 or at our website blockchain360.co.